Tonight, the Diskaya contractors linked to public works kickbacks end their cooperation in a Philippine government probe of anomalous flood control projects. The Philippine Justice Department issues an immigration lookout order for another batch of persons allegedly involved in flood control anomalies. Students from various universities across the Philippines gear up for another anti-corruption protest on Friday. And the Palestinian militant group Hamas reasserts control over Gaza as Israel withdraws its troops from the enclave. Good evening. I'm Tony Velasquez. On our broadcast tonight, the controversial Diskaya contractors refused to cooperate further with the independent commission probing corruption in Philippine public works projects. Meanwhile, the commission gets the Justice Department to issue a new watch list order for 19 persons linked to anomalous flood control projects. Johnson Manabat has tonight's top story.
Government contractors Curly and Sara Diskaya will no longer cooperate with the investigation of the Independent Commission for Infrastructure into the flood control scandal. This was announced by ICI Executive Director Attorney Brian Keith Hosaka after the couple attended Wednesday's hearing.
Upon the advice of their counsel, they invoked their right to self-incrimination and manifested that they will no longer cooperate with the investigation being conducted by the ICI.
According to Hosaka, the couple reached this decision after ICI member and former Public Works Secretary Rogelio Babe Singson said in an interview with ABS-CBN's Karen Davila that no one has qualified yet to be a state witness.
No way. They are not the least guilty. They are not. They are principal players. Nakinabang na yung mga yan. Tama na. Galit na yung tao dahil sa kanila. Tapos bibigyan mo ng state protection to be able to get away from further cases and enjoy the benefits of their anomalous practices. Huwag naman.
But Osaka pointed out, Singsan's statement is a personal opinion and not the position of the ICI.
They explained that they were thinking that when they cooperate before the ICI, they will be getting a favorable recommendation from the Commission as state witness.
Despite this development, investigations of the Commission will continue. However, all information and announcements will now be made by the Executive Director or will come straight from its Chairman, Andres Reyes Jr.
Marami naman tayo mapapagkuhanan ng information. In fact, ang dami nang nagte-testify. And pagdudugtong-dugtong natin lahat yan para makuha natin kung ano talaga nangyari. Definitely, we will get to the bottom of this.
Another batch of individuals have been placed under an immigration lookout bulletin order. The DOJ says it has approved the latest request for an ILBO for 16 people, which include former Congresswoman Mitch Kahayan Uy, Arturo Art Atayde, and District Engineers Aristotel Ramos and Michael Rosaria. Assistant Ombudsman Miko Clavano believes the Diskayas are misguided, noting that cooperation with the government is their only option right now. Diskaya-owned construction firms have been awarded more than 77 billion pesos worth of flood control contracts since 2016. Johnson Manabat, ABS-CBN News.
The Philippine Public Works Department gets help from the Insurance Commission in claiming surety bonds from contractors linked to anomalous flood control projects. Andrea Taguines with the details.
The Philippine Insurance Commission now looking into the possible collusion between insurance companies and contractors of anomalous flood control projects in the country. Commissioner Reynaldo Regalado said while they have yet to uncover actual evidence, they're not discounting the possibility that insurance firms could be in cahoots with construction companies, particularly those that handled the ghost flood control projects discovered by the Department of Public Works and Highways.
Meron pong isang project na tinitingnan namin na parang isang taon, biglang natapos ng 3 buwan. Tapos isasara na kagad yung project. Medyo mapapaisip ka, no? Paano nangyaring natapos, no? At paano hindi nalaman ng kanilang insurance company. Iingatan po namin yung parte ng collusion. Baka meron nga pong ganung nangyari. It will range from from suspension, revocation of license to fines and penalties.
Regalado believes the data sharing and cooperation agreement he signed with DPWH Chief Vince Dizon would aid their investigation. Moving forward, Regalado also wants insurance companies to improve their monitoring of projects, such as by requiring physical inspection.
Kung anong kanya-kanyang role tayo Ito pong insurance ay dapat mag-role din ng kanyang parang other duty aside from the financial. Talagang makita rin nila na talagang natatapos sa mga proyekto ang kanilang pinangatawanan.
The memorandum of agreement is also aimed at fast-tracking the recovery of surety and performance bonds. Dizon said the DPWH has already written to the insurance firms who covered the controversial flood control projects in the 1st District of Bulacan, which officials say is the epicenter of the corruption scandal. These are Liberty Insurance Corporation, Travelers Insurance and Surety Corporation, and Sterling Insurance Company.
Ang claim ay up to 30% ng contract price. Sabihin mo na, mga kontrata natin na ngayon na pinafile natin, marami dyan, mga around 100 million per contract. So, up to 30 million pesos, bawat kontrata ang pwedeng i-claim ng gobyerno. Kung hindi sila mag-cooperate, pasensyahan tayo, aabot tayo ng korte.
Dizon also urged other insurance companies to already come forward if they find any irregularities with the projects they insured. Andrea Taguines, ABS-CBN News.
More anti-corruption protests are set to be held Friday by Philippine university students. A protest march to Malacanang is planned in Metro Manila, while similar protests are also planned in Cebu and Davao. The students are demanding accountability from top government officials amid the country's massive corruption scandal.
Iniimbitahan natin ang pinakamaraming kabataan na nakapag-walkout na, gustong mag-walkout pa ulit at hindi pa mag-walkout, na sumama sa National Day of Action at ipakita yung militansya natin ng hindi pagtanggap ng back to normal operations, as if hindi natin ina-unearth yung trillions of pesos of corruption na dinanakaw sa kinabukasan ng kabataan.
Philippine Vice President Sara Duterte accuses the Marcos Jr. administration of being selective in its probe of public works corruption. She says the investigation should not limit its focus on supposed anomalies during her father's administration alone. The Vice President says the probe should extend to the predecessors of ex-President Rodrigo Duterte. She hit back at Malacanang press officer Claire Castro, who earlier said President Marcos Jr. is cleaning up the former president's mess.
Huwag silang selective. Huwag silang Duterte ng Duterte lang. Kasi kung meron pa sa administrasyon ni Pangulong Aquino, ni Pangulong Arroyo, lahat, kasama na rin yung iskandalo sa korupsyon sa administrasyon ni Pangulong Marcos. Kasi kung totoong korupsyon ang pinag-uusapan natin, hindi naman kahapon lang ang korupsyon Ngayon lang siya lumaki ng ganito kagrabe na nasira yung ating bansa. Pero yung korupsyon, matagal na nareklamo yan ng bayan.
Philippine Vice President Duterte rules out asking President Marcos Jr. for help in securing the interim release of her father from the International Criminal Court. She says there is no way to reverse what she calls as her father's kidnapping and transfer to the Hague Tribunal. The court recently denied the request of the former president's defense team to grant him temporary release on humanitarian grounds.
Hindi ko kakasapin si BBM para kay dating Pangulong Duterte dahil ang sa akin is yung ginawa nila na kidnapping ng isang Pilipino sa loob, government kidnapping ng isang Pilipino sa loob ng ating bansa. Pero for me, to go to him and request on behalf of former President Duterte, no. Because there's no going back sa ginawa nila na rendition.
Malacanang press officer Claire Castro rebukes Philippine Vice President Duterte for claiming she never sought the resignation of President Marcos Jr. Castro insists the Dutertes have been openly demanding for the president to step down. She suspects Duterte supporters are circulating rumors of a supposed military plot to overthrow the president.
Sino ba yung nagnanais na makuha ang posisyon sa Pangulo ngayon? Sino ba yung gustong ma-retain ang kanilang power? Hindi ba? At sabi nga natin, ang problema kasi dito, puro salita, puro bintang. Pag walang ebidensya, di ba walang kwenta? Nagsalita naman si General Bronner na mayroong kumakausap talaga sa kanila. Ex-generals pa yata, di ba? Para mga retired, di ba, officials na masasabi natin siguro na talaga maka-Duterte. Dahil ano bang nais nila, di ba? Kapag kasi natanggal sa pwesto ang Pangulo, sino ba ang papalit? So may mga ganong ingay, pero maliit. Sabi nga ni Secretary Gibo, certain groups lang, so maliit. So hindi naman dapat na ikaw-worry, pero syempre dapat bantayan pa rin.
The Philippine Health Secretary inspects an unfinished Marikina City Health Center which had previously been declared as a completed project. The city government denies any irregularity in the project and claims that 21.5 million pesos budgeted for it was insufficient to finish the structure. This report from Francis Orsio.
Overgrown with grasses and looking abandoned. That's what health officials found at the supposed Super Health Center site in Barangay Concepcion 2, Marikina City during an inspection Wednesday morning. Health Secretary Teodoro Herbosa, who led the inspection, says the Marikina site is one of the 297 Super Health Centers across the country that have been declared completed but remain non-operational. Despite a reported cost of 21.5 million pesos, what stands in Barangay Concepcion 2 is a mere foundation, the supposed phase 1 of the Super Health Center project.
Ang completed pala, ibig sabihin yun lamang phase 1. Mga phases pala yung nangyari dito. Parang mukha siyang gubat, no? Na mukha siyang bakanting lote na napakaraming halaman.
The Health Department said the project's funding came from the 2021 General Appropriations Act, which was downloaded to the Marikina local government. Construction for Phase 1 began in December 2023 and was declared finished by April 2024. The Health Department notes a functional Super Health Center can be built within 1 to 2 years. But in this case, progress is stalled because the contractor, Streamline Builders Corporation, failed to submit the necessary documents to the Department of Public Works and Highways.
Ang sabi naman ng DPWH, hindi nila masimulan kasi wala sila ng tinatawag na as-built plan. Hindi binibigay nung contractor sa DPWH ng as-built plan. Kaya kahit may pondo na para dun sa phase 2 sana, hindi makapagtuloy.
The Marikina City government denies claims that the Super Health Center should have already been completed. City officials insist that 21 million peso budget from DOH was only enough to build the foundation and not the entire facility.
Hanggang foundation work lang yung 21 million. So pag sinabi mong completed na, ibig sabihin kung ano yung nandoon sa scope of work, natapos na.
The city government added that it has already requested an additional 180 million peso from the health department to build the 4-story facility, but funding has yet to be released. The Department of Health asserts that based on their estimates, a medium-sized health center can already be built for only 12 million pesos. Still, the Marikina LGU insists there were no irregularities in their handling of the project.
Tingin ko nagkaroon ng kapabayaan sa part ng Department of Health. Kulang sila sa funding, kulang sila sa monitoring, kaya nagkaganon na ang sinasabi nating proyekto.
For now, the Marikina City government plans to resume construction of the Concepcion 2 Health Center in 2026 using local funds. Meanwhile, the Health Department will submit to the Independent Commission for Infrastructure this Friday the list of 297 Super Health Centers previously marked as completed but deemed unusable for further investigation into possible irregularities. Francis Orsio, ABS-CBN News.
Newly installed Philippine Ombudsman Jesus Crispin Remulla earns praise for reversing the policy of his predecessor who had blocked public access to the assets and net worth statements of public officials. But some Philippine journalists give a cautious welcome to the chief graftbuster's move. Cassandra Salonga with this story.
The reopening of the statements of assets, liabilities, and net worth or silence of public officials to the public
was widely welcomed by government officials. No less than President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. himself said he is willing to make his salin public. The chief executive adds he will also ask members of his cabinet to do the same.
These old rules were suspended in the last administration. I was quite surprised to find out when I first came into office that that was no longer the case, that it was almost impossible, in fact, to get a copy of a People's Salin. We are just going back to the old procedure, and we will follow that, whatever happens. Again, my Salin it will be available to whoever would like to, kung hingiin sa akin ng ICI, di siyempre bibigay ko.
Members of both houses of Congress also support the ombudsman's move. House lawmakers call it a step forward transparency, while others see it as a way to promote public interest and the common good. House Speaker Boji D said they will review the ombudsman's request to publicize the salins of House members. D adds he is willing to publish his own salin to set an example to his colleagues in Congress. Senate President Vicente Soto III said he will consult other senators on the relaxation of salin rules, noting it was done before. Some senators have voiced support for the lifting of salin restrictions, which has long been sought by the public.
Nararapat lang na binalik ito ng ombudsman na mga salin ay dapat isa sa publiko. Magandang hakbang ito para masimulan na ang paglilinis ng ating gobyerno.
For veteran journalist Malu Mangahas, co-convener of the Right to Know Right Now coalition, the restrictions are disappointing.
A lot of conditions that could warrant non-disclosure. One is the salin is not available at all, meaning that should be punishable act already. I think the intent is good per se, but maybe they should have given it more serious thought.
For the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines, a stronger freedom of information law is still the key to promoting accountability in government institutions.
Kailangan talaga natin, I think, although wini-welcome nga natin yung mga ganitong mga developments, ay mas malawak na freedom of information law. Kasi ano lang to policy, di ba? Memorandum to Pwede itong i-atras at some point pag nag-iba yung ombudsman.
The group also hopes a special provision requiring media and students who obtain salin copies to submit links of their published outputs such as articles or research papers to the ombudsman will not be used to deter the search for the truth.
Yun yung kailangan natin bantayan na walang balik dapat ito sa mga journalists na hihingi ng salin tapos magsusulat based on that.
The memorandum states that failure to submit the required output may be considered grounds to deny future salin requests from the same individual or organization. But the ombudsman clarified that this safeguard is necessary to guarantee that salin copies are used for their intended purpose. On Tuesday, the Office of the Ombudsman issued a memorandum allowing public access to the salins, which can be an effective tool in spotting potential corruption.
It can help with the lifestyle check to see if there are disproportionate wealth within the ranks. Then it can be used now as a basis or supporting evidence to a complaint as against a person for graft and corruption.
Under the new guidelines released by Ombudsman Jesus Crispin Remulla, requesters need to present a valid ID and prove they are not fictitious persons to access salins. To prevent potential abuse of information or the salin being weaponized, sensitive information such as home addresses, signatures, government IDs, and information about minors will not be included in the salin copy. Cassandra Salonga, ABS-CBN News.
Philippine President Marcos Jr. supports calls to have a live stream of bicameral conference committee deliberations on the proposed 2026 budget. But he calls on Filipinos to trust the independent commission despite its refusal to live stream its probe of anomalous flood control projects. Job Manahan has more details.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. intends to live stream the bicameral conference committee deliberations for the proposed 2026 budget. This will be a first since the BICAM process has traditionally been held out of public view. He says Senate President Tito Soto and House Speaker Faustino Boji D already agreed to live stream the meeting.
We will live stream the entire process so that if there are questionable, shall we say, insertions or additions or all that, it will also be clear who moved, who made those changes or who proposed those changes, so that people will know. So That is what we have instituted, some new procedures.
This is welcome news to many sectors, including some lawmakers like Akbayan Party List Representative Shell Jokno, who has repeatedly pushed for transparency in the BICAM deliberations to dispel doubts on the budget process amid allegations of insertions happening behind closed doors. This push for transparency stemmed from the public's demand for accountability in the massive corruption involving flood control projects. This is also the reason the president is appealing to the public to give the fact-finding body a chance to do its job. The chief executive also rejected allegations he might influence the commission if evidence leads to Malacanang. Marcos maintains he has nothing to hide.
We follow the evidence, and wherever that leads is not something that we try to direct or influence. That's why we have the ICI. They are an independent commission, and that is their job. And their job is to follow the leads that they receive. Wala naman tayong tinatago, wala tayong malakas. I know that there are several. The opposition would love to bring me into this, to include me in all of this. But that's politics.
The president also addressed supposed grumblings in the military. Marcos says support for his administration remains on solid ground despite persistent cold rumors. He adds government is not downplaying this kind of talks.
We try to listen to everyone. And so that's the only way. That's the only real way that you can keep the support of people in different sectors. When you ask me how confident I am, all I can say is that in our assessment, we are still very much, the administration is still very much on solid ground in terms of support from the different sectors of society.
Job Manahan, ABS-CBN News.
The chief of the Presidential Anti-Organized Crime Commission in the Philippines is replaced by retired National Police Chief Benjamin Acorda Jr. Malacanang announced Acorda's appointment but did not explain why Gilbert Cruz was removed as the commission's executive director. Acorda retired in March last year after President Marcos Jr. extended his service by 3 months. Cruz led the commission during its crackdown on offshore gaming companies and the subsequent arrest and deportation of illegal offshore gaming workers. A Kuwaiti court convicts the main suspect in the 2024 murder of Filipino overseas worker Daphne Nakalaban. Philippine Migrant Workers Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak says the convicted killer was given a 14-year prison sentence. Nakalaban's killer is a Kuwaiti national who admitted to the crime. The Filipina was reported by her employer to have gone missing in October last year. Her decomposing remains were found 2 months later within her employer's backyard. Coming up, Hamas fighters clash with armed groups in Gaza as the militant group looks to reassert its control over the Palestinian enclave. This and other stories when The World Tonight returns. We're back on The World Tonight. Hamas reasserts control over Gaza as the group's ceasefire with Israel holds. Hamas militants killed alleged gangsters to restore law and order in areas left behind by Israeli troops. Some Palestinians welcomed the show of force by Hamas, but others are fearful this could threaten the truce with Israel, which has repeatedly called for Hamas to disarm and cede control of Gaza. Calm is restored in Madagascar's capital, where weeks of unrest led to the ouster of President Andry Rajoelina. The military has seized power after lawmakers moved to impeach Rajulina, who earlier attempted to dissolve the National Assembly. Rescue efforts continue for missing workers of a Bangladesh garment factory which caught fire Tuesday. Authorities say 16 people were killed in the blaze. The fire triggered an explosion and the release of toxic fumes at a nearby chemical warehouse. Local authorities have yet to confirm the total number of missing workers. The Philippines suspends its sugar imports until the middle of next year. The Agriculture Department says the moratorium will be in effect until the country's current sugar milling season ends between May and June 2026. Officials say this aims to address the concerns of the local sugar industry that cheaper imported sugar could flood the market and push down prices to the detriment of Philippine sugar planters. Philippine shares close higher for the third day in a row. The details from Michelle Ong.
Asian stocks climbed on Wednesday, supported by dovish remarks by Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, but trade jitters are limiting the upside. Philippine shares also up for a third straight session.
I've been seeing net foreign selling again. The market seems to be continued to be dragged on by the weakness in peso. So we must note that the peso has been hovering around 58 pesos per USD. So this is roughly the same level as at the end of last year, but this is also around 5% weaker from its peak last May at 55.14.
In corporate stories, Globe and Ayala-backed ST Telemedia Global Data Centers, or STT GDC Philippines, announcing that connectivity partners Globe Telecom, Radius Telecoms, and Source Telecoms, and several others are now on board and ready to commence services at its flagship STT Fairview 1 data center. As the country's largest carrier-neutral data center campus, it will deliver 124 megawatts of plant capacity and infrastructure powered by 100% renewable energy. In property news, Megawide bags 2 new contracts with MegaWorld to build residential towers, Uptown Modern and One Portwood in Newport City, right across NAIA. The multi-billion peso contracts form part of the 20 billion peso new contracts that the company has been negotiating to bring its order book to 50 billion by year-end. Meanwhile, SM Prime Holdings is set to open its 89th mall in the Philippines this Friday. SM City La Union, also its 9th mall in northern Luzon. This mall spans more than 51,000 square meters of leasable area, over 80% of which has already been taken up. Finally, Housetalk is looking to raise up to 2 billion pesos from the issuance of fixed-rate Philippine peso-denominated bonds. In the meantime, the 2022 IPO name is declaring regular cash dividends of 3 centavos per common share, record date November 17th and payable on December 19th. Michelle Long, ABS-CBN News.
Our final word tonight is a quote from Edmund Burke. When bad men combine, the good must associate, else they will fall one by one, an unpitied sacrifice in a contemptible struggle. And that is the world tonight, the 15th of October 2025. I'm Tony Velasquez from the Philippines. Thank you. Mabuhay!